Hang on, guys. Okay. Nathan had not seen some of these since their first day of training. There were several other men he had never seen before, but he sensed they were also maintenance missionaries, which is the MM project. Remember, they talked about this MM project? That's what that stands for. Okay. Um, Elder Miller was at the front of the room, and he stood silently as numerous containers holding manila envelopes were placed on a table beside him. One of the tables were filled. He grabbed a microphone and he faced the group. Today we shift gears. Elder Miller said excitedly, "The prophet received a revelation yesterday that the time has come to distribute the letters. You'll each be assigned to deliver letters to bishops in the approximately 3 states somewhere along the Wasatch Front. You have 2 days to get those into their hands. It is absolutely essential that the bishops or one of his counselors receive these envelopes and reads the messages printed on the front. When you complete your task, return to this room and report directly to me." "Are we allowed to know what the letter says?" one of the missionaries asked. Elder Miller pondered the question for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, I feel it's fair. Of course, you're all bound to secrecy until the letters are read on Sunday in each ward." He took the manila envelope from the table next to him and opened it. He said, "So you know, each letter is signed by the corresponding area presidency and is tailored to the needs of that area." He put on a pair of glasses and began to read. "To the LDS church members in the Utah South area, in recent general conference addresses and in several Inside Magazine articles, the First Presidency and the Quorum of the 12 Apostles have given repeated warnings to both the nation and to the members of the church. They have spoken of the need for spiritual and temporal preparedness in anticipation of the upcoming events that will transpire if if the commandments of God are ignored." Okay. This is a little bit weird to read. Okay, hang on just a minute, guys. Okay. Um, the prophetic warnings have largely gone unheeded, and the Lord will soon fulfill his promises as outlined in the doctrine and the covenants. Therefore, under the direction of the first presidency, we issue an invitation of gathering to you. The church has prepared gathering places during the Wasatch Front where members of the church can be shielded from any turmoil that may soon come upon our nation. Your local leaders have been given specific instructions on where your particular stake has been assigned to gather. Sincerely, the Utah South Area Presidency. Okay. Elder Miller put the letter back in the envelope and pulled out another sheet. The bishops also will receive this list of instructions. They are told to read the letter at the start of the sacrament meeting this coming Sunday and then tell their members that a semi trailer will be brought to their building that afternoon for families to bring their clothing and food storage. And then he'll tell them what buses they'll be leaving on for their camp. Chet raised his hand. "So the ward members only have a few hours to prepare? Why not give them a couple of days?" Nathan knew Chet was purposely playing that devil's advocate, but Elder Miller's eyes narrowed. I'm sure Elder Miller did not like this. That's why he gave him the look. As you know, it's probably the side eye look, like, "Don't you dare question me." So he goes. Um, the saints have been told specifically and repeatedly over the past few months to prepare, especially a few weeks ago at General Conference. Now comes the true test. Who will be ready for the bigger doom? I'm sorry, that's not what it says. It says, who will be ready for the bridegroom? Oh my. The reference to this parable of the 10 virgins was clear to, let me turn the page, was clear to everyone, and Chet nodded. "Oh, you're right," he said. "Either they're ready by now or they're not." Elder Miller's stern look softened slightly. If families choose not to leave their homes on Sundays, are they lost forever? No, but as we mentioned at the start of your assignments, the saints who respond to the prophet's invitation will be taken to the best camps with the most supplies, safely tucked away from civilization. They'll be greatly blessed for their immediate obedience. Others might decide to come in a few days or weeks, but their opportunities will be greatly limited, both temporarily and spiritually, compared to if they had obeyed the promptly. As we've told you before, this is part of the Lord's larger plan to see who is truly faithful and who is living on borrowed light each Sunday. Elder Miller paused to collect his thoughts. That reminds me of what President Ezra Taft Benson once said. It hit me so hard that I memorized it. He said, there is a real sifting going on in the church, and it is going to become more pronounced with the passage of time. It will sift the wheat from the tares. Okay, hold on, remember. Hold on a minute. Now, I want you to remember something. Lori, in her little speech that she gave, she talked about the wheat and the tares. And then the judge, remember, the judge told her she was not exactly correct as to what that meant. It meant something else. Or somebody, I need to go back to that, but somebody in the room reminded her that that's not exactly what that meant and that she was actually using this in the wrong way. Okay. But that, I mean, that is where this came from. So let me continue. He goes, it's just too funny, boy. Every time I think about these things that she said and where it came from, it just shocks me. It really does. It will sift the wheat from the tares because we face some difficult days, like of which we have never experienced in our lives. And those days are going to require faith and testimony and family unity, the like of which we have never had. The room was silent before he added, Brethren, those days have arrived. After a few more instructions, each maintenance missionary, which is the project, remember, was given a stack of manila envelopes. Nathan's envelopes were all addressed to the bishop in Spanish Fork, Utah. He was given a map of the city along with a clipboard and a pen where the recipients needed to sign that they had received their letters. Nathan noticed each envelope had the official logo of the church in the upper left-hand corner, and along the bottom of the envelope was printed, urgent material that must be read by Friday, but do not open until you are in your office in the presence of your bishopric, I'm sorry, oh boy, in the presence of your bishopric counselors. Okay, now that's some term they use in the Mormon religion, and I don't know what that, I mean, I had not seen this before, so just bear with me as I get it out, okay? Why would they put that on there? Nathan asked Chet, who was now standing near him. I think there will be at least 3 witnesses to the letters that were read. It's hard to believe, but there are some bishops who might choose to disregard the letter as if it first read in the presence of others. Can you fathom that? Nathan asked. If the bishop refused to read this to his congregation, he'd potentially dooming all his whole ward. Exactly. That's why there's so many double checks. Nathan was assigned a small church-owned car, and it felt strange to be behind the wheel of this smaller car after so many weeks of driving his big truck. He zoomed down the freeway into southern Utah County and had to make a conscious effort to avoid speeding. He arrived in Spanish Fork by early afternoon and had little trouble locating the bishop's houses, but only a few were home from work yet. There were wives or children offered to sign for them, but Nathan assured them that the bishop himself needed to receive it. He was usually able to arrange a time to return to the house, and once evening arrived, he made much better progress at the getting the envelopes delivered. Oh my. In other cases, the bishop's family member said, he's down at the church. And Nathan soon realized he could catch 2 or 3 of the bishops in one stop at the church. The bishops all seemed curious about the envelope and asked him why it was hand delivered. But all he could do was point to the sentence printed in the front of the envelope. By 9:30 p.m., he had delivered his last envelope and began driving back to Salt Lake. He arrived at the distribution center at 11 p.m., but he followed Elder Miller's instructions and went to the conference room. He was surprised to see Elder Miller still there, talking to other missionaries. Hi, Nathan, Elder Miller said as he took the clipboard from him. How'd it go? I delivered every one of them. 3 bishops were out of town, but in each case, I delivered the letter to one of their counselors. Excellent, Elder Miller said. We'll have some of our senior missionaries call each person on the list on Saturday to make sure they've met their bishopric and they have understood the letter. That's a good idea, Nathan said. I'm sure they'll have plenty of questions. Elder Miller patted himself on the back. Well done, Mr. My young friend. You've earned a good night's sleep. Thank you, Nathan said with a weary smile. Do you think our pace will slow down soon? Elder Miller smiled back. Only in your dreams. Sleep tight. Chapter 22. On Sunday morning, Nathan parked a large bus in the far end of his meeting house in the parking in Orem. He spent that past 2 days helping to retrieve buses throughout northern Utah that the church had rented to take the saints to the mountain refuge. So it was a relief to finally reach that point. He had been thrilled in their coordination meeting that day before the bishop's storehouse when Elder Miller had said, wherever possible, we've assigned you to your home ward so you can encourage your family and friends to gather if they're hesitant about following the prophet's invitation. This is the most crucial decision they will ever make. How much can we reveal to them? Chet asked. Not much, Elder Miller said. I recommend you simply tell them the same thing I've been telling my family. Get on the bus. No matter what happens, get on the bus. There had been some conflict during the meeting, though, when Elder Miller told the missionaries they must ask each person boarding the bus whether they had received the chip. If people had been implanted, they could not board the bus. Okay, so this is where we're going to have a problem because remember, his girlfriend Maria was in Chicago at her internship. When she got to Chicago, she went ahead and got the chip implanted because she could only use that while she worked in this building through her internship. So he's going to gather the people in his ward, and she's part of the ward. But if she has the since she has the chip, she cannot get on the bus, right? So this becomes a big problem. Here we go. Why not? One missionary asked. That doesn't seem very Christian like to me. Elder Miller quickly turned to him, his face grim. Our sources tell us the government is already tracking peaceful movements with their chip, and we can't risk having our camps discovered that way. Besides, wouldn't you agree the church has clearly warned the saints to never get that chip? Uh-oh, this is a big problem. Yes, I do. Then it is fair to other saints if their camp is discovered by the enemy because of someone's chip. The missionary was taken aback. No, but that wouldn't. Elder Miller held up his hand. Don't say it wouldn't happen. It will happen. Do you think of all the preparation by the church is just for fun? We're in a spiritual war, and that chip is one of Satan's tactics. Evil forces are among us. It might not be fully evident yet, but it soon will be. After locking the bus, Nathan walked to the meeting house just before the start of the sacrament meeting. As he entered the building, he was greeted by several ward members. Everyone seemed cheerful and upbeat, but he knew their moods were about to change. He took a seat toward the back of the chapel and looked around for Marie's parents, but they hadn't arrived yet. He turned his attention to the bisphoric and on the stand and noticed they were unusually somber as they watched the congregation take their seats. Bishop Tanner made eye contact with Nathan, who gave him a small smile and a thumbs up. The bishop was aware that Nathan was working in some capacity for the church, and suddenly everything clicked in his mind. You know, the bishop mouthed to Nathan, who nodded. After the opening song and prayer, Bishop Tanner steps up to the pulpit holding a single sheet of paper. We have a special announcement today. I've been given a letter from the area presidency to read to the congregation. What it contains might come as a surprise to you, but I feel it's the will of the Lord, and I will follow these instructions. Bishop Tanner then read the letter inviting the ward members to gather to the refuge in the mountains. As he read the letter, Nathan watched families begin whispering to each other, and some members appeared completely stunned. Bishop Tanner finished the reading of the letter. Our ward will be gathered with other stakes from Orem at a former girls' camp in the mountains above Kamar. As the letter says, the gathering is taking place today. We've made copies of the letter and other instructions for every family in the ward, and we'll pass them out to you in the foyer. We ask that all home teachers make sure your assigned families receive a copy if they aren't in attendance today. The bishop continued, we've been told to have your return to your homes at this time. There will be a semi-trailer brought to the church this afternoon. All families who choose to gather with the stake should bring their food storage and to the trailer, as a bus will leave from this building at 5 p.m. to take us to the camp. Just so you know, this is an announcement is being made in wards all along the Wasatch Front and also in surrounding areas. We know this will be difficult decisions, but we know that if you ask the Lord in humility about this invitation from our leaders, you'll receive a confirmation about what you should do. I testify this is the Lord's will for us at this time, and I close this meeting in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. All right. Bishop Tanner led his counselors off the stand, and he exited to the foyer. Conversations erupted all over the chapel, and everyone seemed unsure what to do. Eventually, they started moving toward the foyer to receive their copy of the letter. Nathan noticed the Shaws were now standing in the back of the chapel, and he went toward them. Carol came and gave him a hug. Have you heard from Marie? Nathan asked. Yes, she seems to be doing well, Carol said. Oh, that's good, right? Well, that's all we can hope for, Aaron said. Now, Aaron, you know, is Marie's father, okay? And Aaron did not want her to take this internship. Neither did the mother, and they tried to get Nathan to talk her out of going. But she went ahead and went to her internship because this is what her career opportunities were going to come from, was this internship. Okay. He goes, good. I'm actually part of this gathering project that the bishop announced. I'll be the one driving the bus to the camp. Wow, you're right in the thick of it, Aaron said. Nathan searched for their faces. So are you two going to the mountain camp? They both looked at the ground for a moment. Aaron finally said, we'll be staying for now. To be honest, I can't just leave my job that quickly. The government would get suspicious. Plus, if Marie came back, she wouldn't know where to find us. Nathan was surprised at Aaron's answer. He was sure that the Shaws would have been the first ones on the bus. I guess I can understand, he said. I wish Marie was here. Please tell her hello from me when you talk to her. We will. Carol said, she tried to call you but couldn't get through. Your number was no longer in service. She really tried to reach me? Well, now Nathan's shocked about this. Nathan asked, tell her I'm sorry about our argument and I'm eager to see her again. Hopefully this job won't last forever. Carol smiled. She'll be happy to hear that. Please don't give up on her. Hopefully this experience will help her appreciate the church more. I'm hoping for that myself, Nathan said. Well, I better get things coordinated with the bishops. If you change your mind, the bus is leaving at 5 p.m. I'm hoping that he shook his head. He shook Aaron's hand, and Carol gave him a quick embrace. We care about you, Nathan. Stay out of danger. You too, Nathan says before stepping away, fighting off the first real pangs of the homesickness he'd felt all along. Okay, so now the Shaws are saying they're not going. But now remember, Miss Aaron has the chip, and so does Marie. That is one of the reasons why they cannot get on the bus. Let's keep going. The rest of the day was a blur for him. He moved the bus closer to the meeting house, and soon a fellow maintenance missionary arrived in an 18-wheeler, unhitched the trailer next to the bus. Nathan stayed busy throughout the afternoon, loading the trailer with food storage and other useful items that members were bringing from their homes. The supplies from all three wards in the building were being put in the same trailers, and within a couple of hours, two other buses arrived to transport members from the other wards that also met at the building. As 5 p.m. approached, a line of people began to form on the curb alongside Nathan's bus. He stopped. He stepped up to help load the trailers, opened the bus door, and then stood at the first step. I'm happy to see you all here on time, he said. I want to assure you we're not just dropping you out into the wilderness to fend for yourselves. I visited your camp location several times, and it's beautiful. One lady near the front of the line raised her hand. I'm eager to get there. I've been waiting a long time for this day. Nathan smiled at her. You know this was coming? Absolutely, and so did a lot of my friends. The Lord has been guiding us for several years to prepare for such an event. I agree with you, Nathan said. Just then, a minivan pulled into the parking lot, and an older couple let out cries of relief as a woman and her three young children hurried toward them. The man walked toward Nathan and said, This is my daughter and her kids from Pleasant Grove. She's a single mom, and she really wants to be with us. Would it be all right if they come into our camp? Elder Miller had discussed this possibility with the missionaries, and he said if extended families felt inspired to be in the same camp, it would be okay. Yes, Nathan said, the more the merrier. The man thanked him profusely, and the couple embraced their daughter while the others in line welcomed the new arrivals. Nathan took a clipboard that held a list of current ward members and began checking the people onto the bus. He asked each person if they had received the government microchip, and most just simply said no. However, one feisty woman said, "Most certainly not. Besides, why would anyone who got that ship want to go to the camp? They already disobeyed the prophet once again, right?" And that's true because remember the church said, "No, do not get that ship. Do not get that ship." It told everybody, "Do not." Okay, it was against the rules to get the chip. Nathan raised his eyebrows. "I can't argue with that." By 5:20, the bus was mostly full, but there were still a few seats left. Nathan checked in the last family and then looked through the list. There were about 60 people on board. As he looked at their faces, he wasn't surprised to see many longtime stalwarts of the ward. It saddened him, though, that only 6 families with younger children were on the bus. The other 2 buses soon departed, and Nathan motioned to Bishop Tanner, who was sitting with his family in one of the front seats. The bishop came forward. Nathan handed him the clipboard. "Please look through this list and see if you expect anyone else to come." The bishop glanced through the names, shaking his hand a few times. "Wow, there's quite a few more than I thought there would be here, including our ward clerk and his family. But I suppose we need to leave, right?" Nathan shrugged. "The other buses have left, but I'll wait as long as you want. I think we should get to the camp while there's still some daylight, though." Bishop Tanner nodded as he peered out the front window of the bus, looking in vain for more arrivals. "That's fine. They knew what time we were leaving." "Very well," Nathan said. "Let me shut the trailer." He hopped out of the bus and locked the semi-trailer that his colleague would retrieve that evening and take to the camp to the next day. He was pleased to see it was filled with all kinds of cans and boxes. It would be a nice addition to the supplies he had already delivered to the camp during the past few weeks. Nathan stepped back into the bus, and Bishop Tanner said, "While you were locking the trailer, I told the group that I'd like to leave with a prayer. I think that's wonderful." The bishop faced the bus passengers and offered a tremendous prayer that was filled with gratitude for their many blessings. Nathan felt the Spirit descend on the bus, and he sensed angels were already watching over them. Soon they were traveling along 800 North in Orem, heading toward Provo Canyon. The bus passengers were silent as they stared out the windows to take one last look at their hometown. They passed 2 other churches where semi-trailers sat waiting for the maintenance missionaries to retrieve them. Otherwise, everyday life continued on, with people taking walks or riding bikes on the sidewalk. A few people even waved as the buses passed by. As the buses entered Provo Canyon, the group seemed to let a collective sigh of relief. Nathan smiled to himself as he heard one woman say, "I figured if Lehi's wife Sarah could leave her home in Jerusalem, then so could I. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." "Amen," Nathan whispered. They arrived at the camp with just a few minutes of sunlight left to spare, but several other wards had already arrived and were making great progress on setting up their tents. Everyone pitched in to help in some way or another. And within a few minutes, Nathan felt confident he could leave the group in the hands of the senior missionaries who were there. He found Bishop Tanner and shook his hand. "It looks like you're in great shape here," Nathan said. "I better start back down the canyon and return the bus to Salt Lake, but I'll be thinking of you." Bishop Tanner clasped his shoulder and said, "Thank you, Nathan. I know you'll be busy, but please check in on our other ward members once in a while if you can. I'm elated to be here, but it breaks my heart that only a small percentage of the ward chose to accept the prophet's invitation. I can't believe the Shaws didn't come." "Me too, but I think they're worried about Marie." This is what Nathan says. "But I'll keep an eye out for them and others in the neighborhood. I'm even going to give my dad a try." Okay, remember his dad had kind of gotten away from the church, but since him and his dad had gotten back together after he returned from his mission trip, I think his dad decided he's going to try to come back to the church. But the problem is his dad's new wife and Nathan's half sister, they're Catholic, right? Okay, so I just need to remind you of that, of what was going on with that situation, Nathan's dad. Anyway, the bishop's eyes got misty. "They're good people, but they've allowed worldly things to block the Spirit from their lives." Nathan bid farewell to a few other ward members, then he headed down the canyon. He pondered the events of the day and realized America had reached a key point in history. The Lord's faithful saints were safely tucked away in the protected refuges, and now the Lord would fulfill his own decrees. The words of the D and C 45:32-33 came to Nathan's mind. But my disciples shall stand in holy places and shall not be moved. But among the wicked, men shall lift up their voices and curse God and die. And there shall be earthquakes also in the divers places, and many desolations. Yet men will harden their hearts against me, and they will take up the sword once against another, and they will kill one another. Nathan shrugged, knowing that the California earthquake was likely the start of many similar catastrophes across the nation. Oh, Marina, he said. He says, please come home. Chapter 23. Marie was enjoying her internship in Chicago, but Gretchen was keeping her so busy that Sunday was really her only day off. She'd been sleeping in each Sunday to rejuvenate herself. She hadn't attended church yet and actually didn't know where the closest meeting house was. She felt mildly guilty about it, but she really needed a mental break each week, rather than having more people tell her what she should do. She really admired Gretchen, but the woman never slowed down. It was always rush, rush, rush with her. It was a beautiful Sabbath morning, so Marie put on some casual clothes and decided to do some exploring. The Bloomingdale's building had literally everything she needed, so she had to rarely go outside. Get some sunshine, she told herself. She purposely left her cell phone on the kitchen counter and made her way down to Michigan Avenue. The sidewalk was relatively empty, so she just started walking through along the magnificent mile. After a half hour, she decided to get her first close up and look at Lake Michigan as she made her way to the Navy Pier. She walked among the crowds and there, just blending in and occasionally going to the edge of the pier to feel the soft breeze on her face. She stood beneath the huge Ferris wheel that dominated the sky and felt liberating. She realizing no one on earth knew where she was at that very moment. As Marie began to leave the pier, she walked alongside the convention center known as Festival Hall. On one of the lower, I gotta turn the page, guys, hang on one of the lower levels, she saw a sign that read, The Smith Museum of Stained Glass. She noticed admission was free, and she figured it was a good way to spend Sunday. She was pleased that so many of the windows depicted in the Sabia of the Savior, she was pleased to see that so many of these stained glass windows were pictures of the Savior, and she felt spiritually refreshed as she studied each window. Heavenly Father, I'm going to church next Sunday no matter what, she prayed as she left the museum. She'd enjoyed her time wandering the city so much that she dreaded going back to her apartment. But the sun wouldn't be setting soon, and she remembered Bianca's counsel about being alone on the streets after dark. She returned to her apartment to find her parents had left a phone message. She checked the message and heard another say, Marie, we need to talk to you. Call us as soon as you get this. Marie called them back and was surprised at how relieved they sounded to hear her voice. Carol got on one line and Aaron got on the other, and they started to talk. Did you hear the announcement in the church today? Carol asked. No, I didn't make it there. What happened? The prophet invited all of the church members to gather at the camps in the mountains. It's causing quite a stir around here. Marie paused. I guess I'm confused. Why would the prophet ask us to do this? Are things really that bad? Not at this moment, but everything could fall apart quickly. Are you two going to the camp? Marie asked. Not yet, Aaron said. It would be impossible to leave my job that quickly, but we plan to, and hopefully you'll come with us. I don't know about that, Marie said. It still seems to be some sort of knee jerk reaction. Let me think about it. By the way, we saw Nathan this morning, Aaron said. Part of his job is to help transport the people to the camps. He wanted us to tell you hello, and then he's eager to see you again. Marie's heart skipped a beat. I want to see him too. I admit I'm feeling a little lonely. Is there any chance you could fly home for the weekend? Carol asked. We'd be happy to pay for it. I wish I could, but they've assignments lined out for me for the next several weeks in advance. I feel like I'm running as fast as I can, but that I am falling even more behind. Are they treating you okay? Aaron asked. Yes, and they're very happy with me. I'm just still adjusting to the pace. Today I just needed some time alone, so I took a nice walk down to the pier on Lake Michigan, and I felt myself again. That's good to hear, Carol said. Is there anything else we can do for you? Just make the next 3 months go faster, Marie said with a laugh. I miss home, but I'm going to stick it out. They talked for a few more minutes, but after they hung up, all she could think about was Nathan. She was so eager to see her again. His absence had indeed made her heart grow fonder, and she appreciated his high standards and values more than ever. She'd agreed to go to the nightclub with Bianca the first weekend, but she hadn't heard it. She hated it. None of the men there came anywhere close to matching Nathan. In fact, they were somewhat revolting. Since then, Gretchen had dumped so much of the work on her that she'd had no trouble at all telling Bianca she needed to find a new designated driver. Okay, because remember when she first got to this building to do this internship, the person that hired Gretchen had warned her about Bianca and the drinking and just not to be doing that because she only picked Marie because she had such high standards. Okay. After talking with her parents, Marie took a long shower and got ready for bed in preparation for another long Monday. But she decided to check the local TV news to see if the church's invitation to go to the camps was of interest to anyone. She was surprised to see it was the lead story with the caption, "Where did all the Mormons go?" A woman was being interviewed by a reporter in front of the Chicago temple. "It's like the prophet went nuts or something," the woman said. "My neighbor knocked on my door and gave me a letter telling me to go live in the wilderness. I've never heard of such a thing, so I came down here to the temple to find out what's going on, but the place seems empty." The reporter nodded gravely. "So your church has never taught such things before? This just came out of the blue?" "Exactly," the woman said as she adjusted her tank top. "I'd love for someone to show me the scriptures where people just take off for the hills on a moment's notice. It's insane." The reporter turned to the camera and said, "There you go. It looks like the Mormons have flown to the cuckoo's nest, so to speak. Back to you in the studio." Marie shook her head and turned the TV off. "That woman's an idiot," she murmured. "She didn't even know the temple is closed on Sunday." Marie fumed for a few minutes, but she was admittedly feeling apprehensive about the saints being told by the prophet to gather in the mountains. She cringed as she remembered her parting words to Nathan. "I highly doubt the world is going to collapse during my 4 months in Chicago." Marie suddenly felt weak in the knees, but she assured herself everything is going to be all right. "I just walked all over the city and had one of the most peaceful days in my life." The next morning, Gretchen called Marie into her office and motioned toward a chair. "I saw on the news that the Mormons have staged a mass evacuation." Gretchen then asked, "Are you planning to join them?" Marie shook her head. "No, I'll be staying right here. It was just a small minority of our members. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but I talked to my parents and they didn't go either." "Well, I'm glad to hear that. It seems really bizarre." "It surprised me too," Marie said. "Don't worry, I'll fulfill all of my internship duties." "Thank you. You're doing a wonderful job. The idea you came up with are brilliant." Marie smiled. "That means so much to me to hear you say that. I'm doing the best I can do." Gretchen waved her hand. "Sorry to question you about your religious beliefs. They're your own business. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't going to have to hire a new intern." "Nope, I'm staying." "Good." Gretchen says this before holding up the front page of the Chicago Sun-Times that had been on her desk. Next to the article about the Mormons was one about a massive hurricane that was pummeling Central America. Gretchen added, "Maybe your prophet is afraid of the hurricane is coming our way." Marie peered with interest at the page. "Maybe so." During lunch, Marie went onto the internet and opened her favorite website, www.weather.com. She'd been so busy with her internship assignments that she hadn't checked the site for nearly 2 weeks. But Marie had always been fascinated by extreme weather, particularly hurricanes. She had she'd been a young girl when Hurricane Katrina had hit the Gulf Coast in 2005, and the storm had damaged several homes owned by her mother's family in Mississippi. Her mom had talked about the hurricane nonstop for a couple of weeks after that, and since then, Marie had been a weather buff. The lead story on the website was about Hurricane Barton, which had formed through south of Cuba before heading west and thrashing Guatemala as a Category 5 storm with winds approaching 160 miles per hour, one of the strongest storms on record. Marie clicked on a link that showed news footage taking along the Guatemalan coast and was stunned as she watched villages being flooded and torn apart. "That's crazy," Marie said, and she clicked the links to see more. This main storm to see where the storm was headed. The hurricane experts were predicting 5 possible tracks the storm could take, including one where the storm would cross Mexico and then die in the Pacific Ocean. However, one scenario had the storm running north into the Gulf of Mexico and retaining its strength as it approached the coast of Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. I hope that's one's wrong, Marie whispered. It could be Katrina all over. Chapter 24. By early May, the Chinese. Okay, now we have to go back to a lot of chapters. I think it was in chapter 3. It talked about this Chinese diplomat getting this assignment to bring these three cans of something to America. It did not tell us what it was, but they called him the Dragon. This person is called the Dragon. He's only been talked about once before. So, hey there. Oh, I'm so glad to see you. This is Daly. I'm so glad to see you. She goes, I'm like, oops, that we are opening summer case. They're opening summer. Oh, I'm so excited to hear that, Daily Tab. I'm so excited to hear that. I'm so, oh my God, that makes me so happy. Girl, you need to give me a phone call. I sent you my number. Said, call me anytime. Let me get this book finished. It's kind of hard to read. I got to finish it because we need to move on to the next one. Thank God they're reopening Summer's case. All right, chapter 24. By early May, Chinese diplomat Chen Ming, known to his associates as Dragon, had been in Salt Lake City for a full week. His only hint of trouble during his long drive from Florida was being pulled over by a highway patrolman late on Interstate 20 near Dallas. When he saw the patrol car lights flashing behind him, he glanced down and he saw he was going 82 miles an hour. He cursed at himself for such a foolish mistake, but put on a pleasant smile as the officer approached his car. Hello, Officer Dragon said. I just realized how fast I was going. Sorry about that. The officer's stern look softened a little. Let's take a look at your license and registration. Dragon sat nervously as he waited for the officer to return, but he knew his colleagues in the Chinese embassy had triple checked everything related to his driver's license and the car. His record should now be spotless, despite 3 fender benders and a speeding ticket during his years working in D.C. You're good to go, the patrolman had told him when he brought the license back. Just slow down a little, all right? So he only got a warning. I would have got a full-fledged ticket. I will, thank you. The officer then pointed to the big gulp cup resting in his dashboard holder. That's just a soda there, right? Of course, sir. No drinking and driving for me. As Dragon spent each night in Salt Lake hotels, he often reflected on his role in the upcoming overthrow of the United States. He knew his work at the Chinese embassy in Washington, D.C. had been just a small piece in a large puzzle, but the bioterror mission was the first of many dominoes that would help the coalition nations eliminate America and Israel. Okay, so he brought bioterrorists over here. So he's gonna let loose some biohazard, and we're not gonna have any kind of cure and all that kind of thing. That's what's going on here. All right. So the Russians had been in favor of surprising America with a full-scale military attack, but the Chinese leader finally convinced the coalition allies that a low-key, essentially invisible first attack would have a greater effect. Such an attack would greatly weaken America's resolve before the coalition even followed through with Russians' wishes for a military invasion. The Chinese took their, baby, don't jump. I'm sorry, my dog is sitting here. She's trying to jump to the other sofa, and I don't want her to. So I'm just asking her not to jump. Don't jump. All right, let me continue this. All right. The Chinese took history as their guide. Attacks on America, such as Japan's bombing of Pearl Harbor in 1941 and Osama bin Laden's toppling of the Twin Towers in 2001, had temporarily hurt the United States, but those events had also unified the Americans and, in the end, lifted their patriotism to greater heights. Therefore, the Chinese plan would strike at the heart of America by causing disorder rather than unity. If everything went as expected, the U.S. economy would quickly unravel and never recover. God, it sounds like COVID, doesn't it? Anyway, we'll move on. This is the first phase of the plan that had been greatly aided in 2011 when Dutch scientists created a highly contagious and deadly airborne mutation of the H5N1 flu virus. The scientists spent 2012 loudly proclaiming that their version of this virus wasn't as deadly as previously reported, but that didn't matter because the Chinese agents had already snuck it into their laboratory and stolen a sample. Over the next several months, a team of coalition scientists was able to mutate the Dutch strain a step further, making it even more transferable and lethal. The Chinese agents were able to obtain vials of the 1918 flu virus, which was added to the mix, along with a few other deadly illnesses. The final potion was the most potent human killer in the world. The toxin had been tested on humans under controlled circumstances, and the mortality rate had been stunningly high. Dragon had seen time lapse videos of prison inmates who had simply touched the sink where the mixture had been applied, and the effects on the human body were startling. The Chinese scientists had nicknamed the resulting illness the Black Flu because it turned people's skin dark and caused intense flu like symptoms. Victims often literally drowned from the fluid in their lungs within hours because the virus acted too quickly for the immune system to mount and to do an effective defense. The only way America could avoid having this illness wipe out millions of people was through a complete quarantine. That's just not going to happen, Dragon thought. I mean, this does sound actually like some of the, when was this book written? Hmm. Okay, it does sound like COVID. So I guess this kind of thing's been talked about a long time. Anyway, um, Dragon's father had been one of the original Chinese representatives of the coalition. By the 1990s, when Dragon became a full-fledged member of the group, the plan was fully underway. Very few American leaders questioned China and Russia's rapid military growth during the early 21st century, and the plan proceeded smoothly with great secrecy. However, the coalition leaders held their breaths in 2005 when a speech by Chai Hoshin, the vice chairman of China's military commission, was leaked onto the internet. Among other things, he revealed that China would clean up America through bioterrorism. He was quoted saying, "It is indeed brutal to kill 1 or 200 million Americans, but that is the only path that will secure a Chinese century, a century in which the CCP leads the world." He added that remaining Americans would serve as slaves while the Chinese kept the basic U.S. infrastructure intact. The Chinese braced for the public outcry, but his comments were basically ignored by America's media. Actually, the Chinese hadn't expected to implement this part of the plan for several more years, but the Americans themselves, hang on guys, had sped up the process through their own foolishness. The national debt problem had suddenly exploded, and now China was suddenly worried that the United States wouldn't be able to pay back what they had borrowed. Sorry, my little dog's barking. Somebody's walking down the street, so they just start barking. It's so silly. I don't know why he's Jack. I'm gonna have to okay, I gotta let him bark for just a minute and then he'll stop. But he has to bark while somebody walks down the street. God forbid somebody walk into his yard. That's when he comes really, really vicious. It's so silly. Anyway, in some ways, the Chinese felt the US government was actually working in their best interest. The Chinese were astonished as America's leaders stifled capitalism at seemingly every turn. Meanwhile, a growing number of Americans seemed content to live on the dole, so to speak, but the Chinese knew it wouldn't take much to tip this welfare state upside down. Dragon smiled, knowing the tipping point would be triggered by the mixture in the big gulp sitting on his hotel table. During his first day in Salt Lake, Dragon had scouted out several great locations to unleash this toxin. A key reason Salt Lake City was chosen was because of Interstate 15 and Interstate 80 crossed there, and travelers would carry the illness in all directions. He immediately considered the LDS's Church Temple Square as an obvious target, but on the day he walked past it, a group of men were cleaning graffiti off the outside wall. By the next day, a 12-foot high metal fence had been placed around the temple square, as well as blocks that held the conference center, the Joseph Smith's building, and the church office building. So, in other words, they put up a 12-foot fence so nobody could get in to those buildings. As they prepared to take the people to the camps, they also wanted to protect their buildings as much as they could. So, um, so much for that. He told himself, "I think Energy Solutions Arena is now the best location for widespread success." That afternoon, he slipped into the arena and found a custodian mopping the floor. He saw her name on her shirt and said, "Hey, Jasmine, I'm new in town and really need a job." This is what Dragon told her. "I'll even clean toilets for free for a week, just to show you what a good worker I am." This woman raised her eyebrow. "You really do that?" "Absolutely. Let's go talk to my supervisor," she said. Within 20 minutes, Dragon had been accepted as a volunteer worker with the possibility of being hired in the future. He thanked the supervisor profusely, and Jasmine led him back to the custodian closet to give him a list of tasks that she preferred not to do. Dragon spent the afternoon cleaning the urinals and all of the men's restrooms. Things couldn't have worked out better. That evening, he paid cash for disposable cell phones and called his three other partners to find out how things were going for them. Rain reported that she had taken a job at a concession stand in Madison Square Garden that gave her access to their nacho cheese and hot dog ingredients. That would be great, Dragon told her. If you can mix a little into the food, you'll have an amazing result. He then called Fire, who reported that he had been hired to move equipment for trade shows into the Moscone Center. I'm sorry, it's the Moscone Center in San Francisco's largest convention complex. This job gave him access to all the public areas, and with several big trade shows coming up, he was excited about his ability to spread the illness. Meanwhile, Wynn had faced the most challenging assignment due to the massive earthquake in Southern California, and he didn't answer Dragon's initial call. But he later called to say he was able to secure a spot as a volunteer at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, which had been turned into a shelter for those who had lost their homes. I work at a table handing out sheets and pillows and supposedly sanitary gloves that will be covered with a toxin, he said. This place will be powder kegged within a couple of days. Excellent, Dragon told him. Go ahead and get started. The rest of us will soon be underway as well. While working the next day, Dragon noticed Energy Solutions Arena had events scheduled on 3 consecutive nights later in the week. Since the toxins would be more effective during the first 48 hours it was released, he had been able to infect two diverse crowds who would travel back to their home cities and multiply the possible exposures before anyone realized what was happening. This is really terrible, isn't it? You know, Chad Daybell ripped this all up. Okay, Chad Daybell wrote this book. Remember that, the Doomsday Mister himself. So he probably fading. These people would be fade. The toxin would be fading by the third night, but any additional infections would be a plus. It's hard to beat the diversity of pro wrestling, country music, and the Rolling Stones concert. Dragon said with a laugh. Maybe we finally found something that will finish off Mick Jagger. Dragon became acquainted with a few other custodians, and they all wanted to talk about was all they want to talk about was Hurricane Barton. The storm has roared along the western edge of the Gulf of Mexico and had disabled and destroyed most of the oil rigs in its path. It's now bearing down on the Gulf Coast, and mandatory evacuations were being ordered for millions of residents in Texas and Louisiana. Dragon couldn't believe his luck. The American people would be so focused on the hurricane and the continuing earthquake recovery efforts in Southern California that they weren't even aware they were being hit by the worst bioterror attack in history. The timing was perfect. Chapter 25. As word spread in the media that the Mormons had gone to hide in the mountains, vandals and looters took the opportunity to focus on church buildings. Some meeting houses were broken into and then burned, while others were simply covered with graffiti. The temples were being guarded by armed volunteers, but that didn't stop one group of vandals from overwhelming the guards at the Jordan River Temple and starting it on fire. The church immediately closed all the temples and locked the gates, then put the maintenance missionaries on full-time duty, assembling a chain link fence around the temple square and other church-owned buildings in the surrounding blocks. The fence included a strand of electrified wire along the top to greet anyone who tried to climb it. The missionaries even divided into 12-man teams and traveled throughout Utah and Idaho to fence off the other temples that weren't already being used as refuge. Nathan's team worked their way south, and finally they reached the St. George Temple. As he and Chet were securing the fencing across the temple's main entrance, a couple approached them dressed in Sunday clothes. What are you doing? The woman asked angrily. Sorry, the temple is closed, Nathan said. What do you mean? She said. We've been coming to this temple on the last Wednesday of the month for the past 10 years. We need to keep our streak live. Chet was standing, he was standing by, Chet was standing by, fastening the chain link to a metal post. Look around, he said. Doesn't the empty parking lot tip you off? Well, that was kind of rude, Chet, wasn't it? I guess Chet's getting all tired. He goes, that things have changed. The temple workers have gone to the church camps where you should have went. The woman looked offended and turned her husband. Eric, are you going to let him talk to me that way? Who does that sound like? Sounds like Letitia Stouch, doesn't it? Remember when she did the fake break in and we saw the video and she turned to her Al and says, "Are you gonna let him talk to me like that? Can you believe they're accusing me of that?" Yes, it sounds just like Letitia Stouch. I guess all sociopaths sound the same. All sociopaths write the same, right? The woman looked and she goes, "Eric could just frown. He's right, Donna. We should have gone to the refuge with the ward." Donna stamped her foot. "There's no way I'm going to live in a tent." Eric smiled tiredly at Nathan and Chet. "You two keep up the good work. You've helped me make up my mind. Which camp should I go to?" "I recommended driving to the camp in the Snow Canyon," Chet said. "They're still taking saints there." "Thank you," Eric said as he turned to his wife. "Come on, dear, let's do the right thing and rejoin the saints." Donna looked shocked. "Are you serious?" Eric gave a weary shrug. "I'm going. It's up to you whether you come along with me." He started walking back to the car, and Donna followed, shouting at him all the way. Chet chuckled. "I know I shouldn't laugh, but I pity him. I wonder if he's secretly hoping she chooses to stay behind." That's a little bit funny, isn't it? A little bit of humor in this book. Is that right? Okay. While Nathan and his team members were finishing the fencing job at St. George's Temple, they received a message to return to Bishop's storehouse in Salt Lake as quickly as possible for an emergency meeting. They drove back to Salt Lake where bothered to see I'm sorry. They drove back to Salt Lake and were bothered to see government vehicles setting up checkpoints along I-15. "That doesn't look good," Chet said. "Something is definitely going on." They arrived that evening at the bishop's storehouse, and Samuel was waiting there for them at the door. "I'm glad you guys made it," he said. "Elder Miller waited as long as he could, but the meeting is already underway. Go right in." Their team slipped into the back of the room as Elder Miller thanked the missionaries for their diligent service. "Sometimes it's hard to believe that there are only 300 of you," he said. "You've accomplished many amazing tasks. The prophet wishes he could personally thank you for all you've done." Chet raised his hand hesitantly. "Sorry we're late, but it sounds like you're releasing us. Does this mean we're done?" Elder Miller chuckled. "Not even close. But the nature of your service is going to change. Okay, let me explain. Apparently, the Saints' departure to the camps has angered several top government officials. They're frustrated they can't trace the Saints, since none of them have the chip. So now, with those natural disasters causing people to relocate, the government's going to use the excuse that they need to know where every citizen is as a matter of national security. "Well, how will they ever enforce that?" a missionary asked. Nathan spoke up. "They were starting to set up checkpoints along the freeway even as we were coming back." "Yes, they're acting quickly," Elder Miller said. "They've already formed the CHIP Compliance Agency, and their employees are going to start visiting homes and businesses as soon as tomorrow. If they find someone who doesn't have the chip, the person will be detained and be given two options: either be taken directly to a chip implantation center or be jailed indefinitely." "What does that mean for us?" another missionary asked. "We won't be able to travel very easily." Elder Miller paced the floor. "Your new assignment is to stay among the people, seeking out any good hearted people before even greater troubles begin. You'll need to essentially make yourselves invisible. As the Spirit guides you, warn people about what is coming and encourage them to travel to one of our blue camps and seek safety. Please double check our map before you leave so you're familiar with where these camps are." "Where should we start?" one of the missionaries asked. "Are you going to assign us a specific city?" "No, you're on your own. But I would suggest you go to your home wards and neighborhoods and see if you can get anyone else that's still there to listen." "Are the previous wards even recognized by the church now?" Chet asked. Elder Miller shrugged. "I don't want to say we don't care about them, but the focus now is on organizing new wards and stakes at the church camps rather than keeping the old wards staffed and operating." "That makes sense," Chet said. "The members were still here rejected the prophet's counsel." "That's right," Elder Miller said. "They don't have the Spirit with them. We've already heard of the wards that have elected a new bishop. This isn't surprising. When the saints left Nauvoo, some members stayed behind, but their wards either fell apart or they started their own version of the church." Oh, that's what Chad Daybell did. Just started his own religion, you know. What he said, the Church of the Firstborn. Well, there is a such thing as the Church of the Firstborn, but it is not for your life here on earth. Church of the Firstborn is when you join. It's when you become into the spirit world after you pass away. That is when you're into the Church of the Firstborn. Is the way I understand it from the reading and research that I've done. If I'm wrong, please somebody tell me. But that's how it made sense to me. Okay. He goes, Um, how has the church been handling the government's harassment? The missionary asked. We've been somewhat cooperative, but they're putting extreme pressure on the church to reveal where the saints are. The government is paranoid we're putting together a resistance force. Yesterday, we were informed that they might freeze our assets and seize our buildings and vehicles, which is what we've expected all along. The prophet and the apostles are going to spread out, but they will still be leading the church. Don't worry, we'll make it through this dark time and emerge triumphant. The missionaries were quite optimistic. Well, will there be any place we can go if we're in danger, one asked. Yes, we've established a password that will grant you access to the temple compounds and the refuge. It's quite simple. Go to an entrance and state DNC 47. The guard will then say, proceed. Then what will you tell him? Nathan raised his hand. Ask and he shall receive. Knock and he shall be open unto you. Amen. Correct, Elder Miller said. Once you say amen, he'll let you in. Simple enough? The missionaries all nodded. Elder Miller looked across the room at the valiant servants of the Lord that he had grown to love so much. Like I've told you before, we're in a spiritual war, he said. Just follow the Spirit and ask yourself, what would the three Nephites do? Here we go with the Nephites again. All right. The comment brought smiles to the missionaries' faces. All kidding aside, use your priesthood powers as you feel inspired to do so. Whether you are to heal the sick or defend yourself against the evil, the Lord will grant you the righteous desires of your heart. Elder Miller paused, suddenly overcome with emotion. You've become like sons to me. I'm so grateful to know each of you. Now go collect your belongings from your apartments, and then we'll give you one of the final buses rides to the destination of your choice. Farewell, my dear brethren, until we meet again in a better time and place. Nathan joined several missionaries who were transported to Utah County, and he helped the bus driver drop him off on the corner near the Shaw's home. He initially planned to first visit his father, but as the bus approached Orem, he felt compelled to go see if Marie's parents were still in the city. He knocked on the door and was relieved when Aaron opened it. He stepped forward and took Nathan by the arm. Let's go for a walk, okay? Nathan shrugged. That's fine with me. Once were moving down the sidewalk, Aaron said, sorry about that, but I think the government is bugging my house. Why would they do that? Aaron looked around and said quietly, for a very good reason. You and I are on the same team. I work at the NSCA data center, but I also work undercover for the church. Nathan's eyes were wide. You're a double agent? Aaron smiled. I suppose, but I like to think of myself more like the spies that Elma and Captain Moroni used. I just relay information to the leaders of the church about the situations or the government decisions that might affect them. Wow, you're in a precocious period. I'm sorry. He goes, wow, you're in a precarious position. You're not kidding, Aaron said. I fully realize that if the government finds out what I'm doing, they'll execute me immediately. But just like you, I feel I've gotten heavenly forces watching over me. Well, that explains why you and Carol didn't go to the canvas camp with the ward. Nathan said, okay, he goes, that explains why you and Carol didn't go to the canvas camp with the ward. Nathan said, I was surprised to see you stayed behind, but now it makes sense. Yes, the church leaders want me to stay right here where I'm at. I had to go get the chip after this latest push by the government, but I'm prepared to cut it out of my hand at the moment I can head for the hills. Do the people you work for with at the data center suspect anything? Well, I don't mention my religion at work, but ever since the Saints went to the refuge, my superiors have treated me differently. That's why I think the house is bugged. One day last week, Carol came home and she noticed items in the living room were positioned just a little differently than when she left, including the computer. So we don't use it much anymore. We searched the whole house for a bug, but we didn't find anything. Unfortunately, this incident has freaked Carol out, so she's been spending a lot of time out of the house. Have you talked to Marie lately? Nathan asked. Yes, and I think she's ready to come home, but her stubborn streak won't let her admit it. She's determined to stick it out until the end of her internship. I just worry about her, Nathan said. Elder Miller makes it sound like America is about to fall apart. Aaron frowned. He's right. I've often heard our country described as a raft on a river. We have fairly smooth rides for about more than 230 years, but the canyon walls are narrowing and the rapids are more severe. We're right at the point where we could still paddle to the riverbank and save ourselves. But honestly, I believe the raft is now out of the citizens' control. I completely agree with you, Nathan said. The biggest problem here is there's a huge waterfall downstream, and we're heading right for it. Aaron says, the Californian earthquake and now the hurricanes are stretching out our country's resources to the limit. I think we're heading to martial law if anything else bad happens. That's why the Lord removed his faithful saints from society. They'll be spared from the turmoil that's coming. Have you heard about the Chip Compliance Authority? Yes, Elder Miller told us about this just this morning. It's terrible, Aaron said. Americans have no idea how to closely their actions are being tracked. Now that the CCA is fully underway, they're going to start cracking down on anything out of the ordinary. What do they consider being out of the ordinary? Aaron shook his head in disgust. Well, pretty much anything that would have been considered patriotic or Christian 30 years ago. Everything we believe is being trampled on. They had walked around the block and were back in front of Aaron's home. Nathan quickly explained his new role, and Aaron said, well, stop by when you can. The way things are going, we both might be heading to Camas soon just to save ourselves. Chapter 26. The day Dragon had selected for releasing his toxins finally arrived. He went to the Energy Solutions arena once again, just as he had for the past 3 days, cleaning the toilets for free. This time, however, he took along the plastic bag that held the high quality rubber. Oh my God! Hang on, guys. Let me start over on chapter 26. Oh boy, it's a little bit okay. The day Dragon had selected for releasing his toxins has finally arrived. He went to Energy Solutions Arena once again, just as he had done for the past 3 days, cleaning the toilets for free. This time, however, he took along a plastic bag that held a high-quality rubber gloves, a protective mask, and a big gulp cup. He went to the custodian closet, retrieved a pail and a sponge, and then went to the nearest men's restroom. He pulled on his gloves and the mask, and then he took the lid off the big gulp cup and gently pulled the metallic canister out. At last, Dragon muttered as he twisted the lid open to reveal the goopy mixture that could have been mistaken for grape Slurpee. He carefully poured a portion onto the pail and then added a gallon of water from the sink. He dipped a rag into the water and then began to wipe down the sink, the handles, the toilets. He repeated this process in the adjoining women's restroom and then worked his way around the whole concourse. He found an open door to the main arena where his crew was putting the finishing touches on the stage for that night's pro wrestling event. He dipped the rag once again in the water and began to slide it down the railing toward the stage. Now that's kind of scary. Think about this. Now you don't ever want to touch a railing going downstairs anywhere, do you? That's kind of frightening. Hey, what are you doing? A woman's voice rang out. Dragon jerked around in surprise. It was Jasmine Bradley, the woman who had agreed to let him do the toilets. Hello, Jasmine, Dragon said. I finished cleaning the restroom, so I thought I'd clean up in here. I heard someone threw up in this area last night. I'm just sanitizing everything. Jasmine gave him a funny look. Who told you that? We didn't even have an event here last night. Dragon acted surprised. Really? Oh, well. By the way, you've been happy with how I've been doing my work this week? Yes, but you can't just roam around the building. You need to stay where you've been assigned. And that's for security reasons. Jasmine stepped closer and looked into the pail. Whoa, that water's filthy. Go change it immediately and get back to cleaning the restrooms. You're right, Dragon said. Looking into the pail, he slipped past her and he headed down the concourse to the custodian closet where he had stashed the canister. Once inside the closet, where he'd stashed his canister, rather than emptying the pail, he dumped more of the toxin into it and got ready to sneak back into the arena. However, as he turned to leave the closet, he came face to face with Jasmine. I need to know exactly what's going on here, she said angrily. What were you pouring into that bucket? Dragon couldn't believe this was happening. In an instant, he grabbed her around the neck and slammed her head into the wall. As she cried out in pain, he smashed his fist into her temple, causing her to slump unconscious onto the floor. Well, Dragon's quite the bully, isn't he? Hey, Colt 45, good to see you there. I'm just reading the last few chapters of this book, Evading Babylon. If you've not followed this guy, Colt, it's this it's this book written by Chad Daybell, who's this the guy that he and his girlfriend, wife, they murdered a bunch of people. So anyway, I'm going to finish this book and then we'll move on to our next thing. This is to the reason why I'm reading these books written by Chad Daybell is because I want to understand the psyche of this man. He is a sociopath. She and his wife is a sociopath, and now she has gotten, I think, 5 life sentences. It's just If you've not kept up with the Lori Vallow or Chad Daybell case, you need to go look at that cult so you can kind of catch up with what I'm doing, okay? So let me finish this chapter. Um, he goes, all right, get back over here. He soon okay, so he made the girl unconscious. He hurt her because she saw him pour it in there. Dragon couldn't believe this happened. In an instant he grabbed her. Okay, I've talked about that one. Dragon quickly stepped over her and shut the closet door behind him. He knew there were security cameras throughout this concourse, so he casually walked to the nearest exit and back to his hotel, not wanting to draw attention to himself. He soon entered his hotel room, let out a sigh of relief, and changed out his custodial uniform and stuffed them into a suitcase before changing into his business attire. He then parted the room's curtains, which gave him a decent view of the street in front of the Energy Solutions arena. He paced back and forth, knowing he'd made a foolish mistake by leaving the canister behind. He desperately wanted to retrieve it, but he sensed doing so would only lead him to receiving a long prison sentence. Why did I go into that arena? He cried out. I was basically done with that job. Those restrooms are going to be toxic for several days, and thousands would have died. Moments later, the first police car arrived, screaming down the street, followed by 6 other emergency vehicles. They all squealed to the stop in front of the arena. A few people then climbed out of a van in protective suits. They found the toxin, he thought. Dragon knew he needed to leave the area immediately, but he couldn't take his eyes off the drama that was unfolding. Dragon saw somebody being carried out of the building on a stretcher and placed in an ambulance, which then sped away with the sirens blaring. Dragon spotted a KSL TV news crew doing a live report from the street below, so he turned on the TV to see what they were saying. The female reporter was nearly hyperventilating as she said, details are sketchy at this point, but apparently bioterror attack was made today at Energy Solutions Arena. An anonymous source told us a maintenance worker encountered an Asian man spreading some sort of toxic material throughout the building. When she confronted him, he attacked her and stuffed her in a closet before fleeing. She was severely beaten, but she was able to crawl from the closet and alert other workers about what happened. Dragon shook his head. I'm such a fool. I should have made sure she was dead. The reporter continued, authorities have in their possession the canister the man had used, and it's being tested to see exactly what kind of toxic it is. They are also examining surveillance footage that may provide clues to the man's identity. Needless to say, all upcoming events are postponed until further notice so that the bioterror teams can check the entire building. A sharp pain shot through Dragon's head and down his arm. He wasn't sure if it was an aneurysm or a heart attack, but something had happened inside of him. He turned off the TV, gathered up his belongings, and then tore up his ID cards before flushing them down the toilet. He then walked slowly down the stairway to the lobby, where he calmly checked out of his room. From there, he proceeded across the street to the tracks train depot, where he joined several other passengers on the platform. They were all watching the activity surrounding the nearby arena. Suddenly, several policemen exited the building and hurried toward the hotel where Dragon had been staying. What's the train supposed to arrive? He asked a man standing on the next to him. It should be here any minute, the man said. Dragon was so worried about being caught by the Americans, but he was more concerned about the response his countrymen would give him if his connection to the toxins was discovered. His Chinese superiors would deny any knowledge of Dragon's plans, leaving him on his own to face a long prison sentence. Within moments, 3 policemen exited the hotel and began working their way to the tracks. The train was now making its way down the tracks. A ray of hope briefly filled Dragon's heart that he might escape, but deep down he knew it would only be prolonged the chase. I'm in disgrace, he said, before stepping onto the tracks as the train approached. The train engineer had no chance to respond, and Dragon's life was over in an instant. Okay, so Dragon takes his own life. He steps onto the train tracks because he knows that he's fixing to be caught by the police because they found the toxins, and they knew exactly who he was. All right. By that night, the news had spread across the nation that a bioterror attack had taken place in Salt Lake City, and anyone who had been within 2 blocks of the arena was urged to go to the local hospital and be tested, although the doctors didn't dare to admit what they were looking for. The problem was that the residue in the canister was a chemist's ultimate nightmare. As the results came through showing a variety of diseases, U.S. officials knew they weren't dealing with just a lone homegrown terrorist. This mixture could only have been produced in one of the world's finest laboratories. Once Jasmine Bradley's identity was released, she was hailed as a national hero. She was in quarantine at LDS Hospital because she had been in contact with the toxin. Doctors were anxious to see if she developed any illnesses, and she soon developed severe pneumonia. She passed away within a week, but not before she became the media darling for having saved thousands of people from the similar fate. In all of the commotions, it took police a few days to make the connection between the Asian man that was killed by the track strain and the ones described by Jasmine. Since Dragon's body didn't have any identification, the police sent his remains to the state medical examiner's office in hopes of finding. There were several other people in the United States doing the same thing. Hey, guilty of crime, how you doing? Oh, you can't hear. Let me turn that. Let me turn that window. Okay. Hey there. I can't hear you when the music is playing, friend. Okay, well, I just turned it down. So guilty of crime. I'm reading this crappy book here written by Chad Daybell. you know, um, and it's called Evading Babylon. So what I'm doing is I'm reading all these books to get into his psyche to understand how he could do these things that he has done. I mean, what made him what makes him tick? That's what I want to know. So here we go. I turned the music down. I hope. Let me see if it worked. Let me see if it worked. Hang on. Listen, my dog's get on my lap. I mean, come on, man. Everything's just going on today. Let's see. Okay. Here we go. Let me turn it. Oh, let me turn it down. Here. Let me see if it'll turn down. Okay, hang on. Oh, there we go. I think I fixed it. Whoop. Here we go. Let's see. Yeah. Whoop. Okay, that's probably good right there. All right, we'll get back to reading over here. Mom almost finished this book. When I do the replay of it before I'll just go ahead and edit some stuff out. But thank you so much, Guilty of Crime. I appreciate it. Anyway, the Chinese leaders watched the news reports coming out of Salt Lake with some amusements. Yes, Dragon had failed to complete his assignment, but the media circus surrounding the attack was actually a blessing in disguise. For the coalition plans, the media was keeping careful vigils on dozens of Energy Solutions employees who were verifying degrees and who were also getting sick, as well as well known pro wrestlers who had gone to the arena early and contracted the disease and was now in the face of the bioterror attack. America's health officials had expanded their testing to include anyone who'd been in Salt Lake that day, and they encountered travelers to avoid passing through the state. Meanwhile, Dragon's partners Rain, Wind, and Fire had all succeeded spectacularly in their missions and were already out of the country enjoying their financial rewards. As the nation's health officials focused on keeping infected people from leaving or entering Salt Lake, the toxic microbes multiplied across the nation, spreading from New York to Los Angeles and San Francisco like an invisible tidal wave. As they were passed from person to person, and then through the entire families, America's social fabric began to unravel from within. Chapter 27. By late May, hospital emergency rooms throughout California and along the East Coast were packed with people complaining of severe flu like symptoms. Interestingly enough, the U.S. doctors gave it the same name their Chinese counterparts did, the black flu, because of the effect it had on people's skin. There were other symptoms emerging, such as white sores and bleeding from the mouth and ears, but it was the jarring sight of the dark and bruised flesh that was causing a panic among the nation's citizens. It was clear to the U.S. health officials that this illness was the same one Jasmine Bradley had contracted. They had never revealed the photos of her body. All right. They had never revealed. Thank you, Guilty of Crime. Thank you so much. All right. They had never revealed that her skin had turned black like that to the public, so they didn't know. The president's cabinet met secretly on Wednesday before Memorial Day, and as they listened to the updated reports on the spread of the black flu, it became clear that the Salt Lake attack wasn't the origin of the illness. They realized other attacks had been successfully completed on both coasts. Something had to be done immediately, or else the nation would be completely crippled by this illness. That afternoon, the U.S. president appeared on TV in a special broadcast from the Oval Office. Good evening, my fellow Americans, the president says. At this time, our country faces a major challenge, even more destructive than the natural disasters we've recently faced. It's called the Black Flu. Many of our larger cities are experiencing it firsthand with your homes and neighborhoods, while other areas aren't affected at all. He cleared his throat and added, "Unfortunately, all indications are that the survival rate for this flu is terribly low. Our scientists are laboring daily and night to come up with a vaccine to combat this illness, but we're still weeks away from achieving satisfactory results. For this reason, I'm issuing an executive order that all domestic air travel will cease immediately to halt the spread of this virus. We will also begin restricting travel across state lines." The president paused, knowing the strong reaction this announcement would create. "This is a decision I haven't made lightly because I know the impact it will have on folks across the land. However, this is a matter of national security. A series of checkpoints will be established throughout the nation to ensure that the virus is contained. Citizens who show symptoms of the illness should be treated with compassion, but they must be isolated to halt the spread of the disease." The president then stared directly into the camera. "I don't want this crisis to divide our nation, but I urge any communities that are not yet affected to create a quarantine zone so that this terrible illness won't infiltrate your neighborhoods as it plays itself out. I'm confident that as we work together to overcome this national trial, we'll emerge as a stronger nation." All right. Now Marie is still in Chicago. Okay, remember now Marie's still in Chicago, and so we now have new threats coming toward her. So it's really, I swear this sounds just like COVID, right? But it's COVID with a twist. But this book was written back in, let me see, I think 2007. So COVID was not even spoke about yet, right? I don't know. I don't know. Let's finish this. In Chicago, Marie Shaw joined her co-workers around a TV in the lobby of the Naples and Austin to watch the president's announcements. They looked at each other in shock afterwards. "What are we going to do?" Bianca asked. "I'll bet hundreds of infected people have already passed through the airport, so it will start spreading here quickly." Gretchen emerged from her office, where she had also been watching the president's message. "Our option is quite simple," she said. "This is our home until the epidemic passes." "What do you mean?" Marie asked. "This office is where we'll stay," Gretchen said. Okay, turn the page. She goes, "We need to act quickly to stock up on food and water, but otherwise we could live here comfortable for weeks and even keep working on our projects." Gretchen ordered that all male employees go down to the shopping mall at the building's lower floors and buy all the food they could. They returned an hour later with bags of food, but that wasn't nearly as much as they'd hoped. "It's a madhouse down there," one man said, showing a torn shirt. "The president's message has been sent everywhere and everyone is in a panic. We need to barricade ourselves in because it won't be long before people start coming here and searching for food." "I've got some food in my apartment," Marie said. "Can I go get it?" All eyes turned to Gretchen since about a dozen employees had condos in the building. After a moment, she said, "Yes, that's a good idea. Marie, everyone who lives in the building, go retrieve anything useful. After you return, we'll block off the elevator doors and the stairwells." Within a few moments, Marie was in the elevator heading to her apartment. She entered her living room, and it struck her how meaningless all of her possessions now seemed. She went through the cupboards and the refrigerator. Soon she had 3 plastic bags filled with items. Then she heard a voice that seemed to come from inside her. "Don't go back there." Marie stopped in her tracks. "You'll die if you rejoin them. Leave this building." Then Marie's mind was open to a quick view of the future that that she returned to Naples and Austin's office. The images were frightening and disturbing and included her own violent death. It reminded her of a statement she had once heard. "The average person is only a couple of layers away from being a savage." Marie dropped to her knees, overwhelmed by what had just occurred, but she knew it was the spirit talking to her. She hadn't necessarily listened to the heavenly promptings very well during the past couple of years, but there was no denying it this time. "Thank thee, Heavenly Father, I will leave." Just then her cell phone rang. The caller ID showed Gretchen's number, so Marie let it go to voicemail. Once the call was completed, she listened to Gretchen's anxious message. "Marie, where are you? I talked to a friend who works in the mall, and things are getting even worse down there. So we're barricading the doors in 15 minutes. Do you need help bringing your things? I'll send Vince down to help you. Return my call immediately." Marie shuddered. and rapidly filled a duffel bag with some granola bars, tuna snacks, and a few other bottles of water. She was terrified that her coworkers would show up at any moment, but she quickly changed out of her business attire into a t-shirt, jeans, and a sneaker. She grabbed the duffel bag and slammed the door behind her and hurried toward a nearby stairwell. It will be a long, winding walk down, she says. Um, so she says, okay. As she entered the darkened stairwell, she heard Vince call her name from the hallway. She looked back over her shoulder and locked eyes with him briefly, then took off down the stairs. She had never moved so quickly. Marie heard him enter the stairwell and shout, "Marie, where are you going?" You can't have everything in my, she goes, "You can have everything in my apartment," she shouted back. "Just leave me alone." Vince did not respond. She kept moving downward. The stairwell soon ended at the edge of the building's main lobby. She saw hundreds of people in a big commotion. She entered the lobby and ducked her head as she tried to plow her way through the main entrance, but she kept getting jostled around. Suddenly, a large man was in her face, shouting, "The end has come! The end has come!" Marie shoved past him and fought through the frantic crowd until she reached the street. There was only one place she'd felt close to heaven during her time in Chicago, the Smith Museum with the stained glass windows. She broke into a trot and headed that direction, arriving 20 minutes later at the Navy Pier. Marie could hardly fashion that it had been less than a month since this peaceful Sunday afternoon she'd enjoyed on that pier. The area was once again filled with hundreds of people, but this time no one was leisurely walking along. Everyone looked agitated and nervous. Thankfully, they all seemed to be hurrying somewhere else. However, a woman ran by and snatched at Marie's backpack, nearly ripping it off her shoulder. Marie yanked it back and gave the woman a threatening look. "Get out of here, you piece of white trash," Marie snarled. Okay, now that's coming from Chad Daybell. "Get out of here, you piece of white trash." All right, Chad. All right. Hmm. How could one simple announcement cause all this fear? Marie thought that then it dawned on her that America had been teetering on this kind of chaos for quite a while. The president's announcement had simply unleashed this underlying tension. Now it was suddenly every man, every woman, and every child for themselves. Marie went directly to the museum where an older man was putting on a jacket near the front desk. "Sorry, but we're about to close." Marie stepped inside and smiled politely. "I just want to look around for a while." "Are you crazy?" they asked. "Didn't you hear what the president said today?" "I did, but I have nowhere else to go," Marie said. "I feel peaceful when I'm here." The woman motioned dramatically at the display. "Well, I'm glad you like the place, but I've got to lock it up. Scram." Marie just stood still. "Don't worry about me. Go ahead and look at me. Go ahead and lock me in," she says. "I'll turn off the lights and shut the door behind me when I leave." The woman stared at her in surprise, then threw her hands up in the air. "Fine, stay here if you want, but I've got to get home to my family." "Thank you," Marie said. "I really appreciate this." The woman merely gave her a strange look before rushing out the door. Once she was gone, Marie made sure the door was indeed locked, and then she jammed a chair under the door and had pulled a table in front of it. She suspected the woman wouldn't even try to come back, and Marie didn't want any company. Once the table was in place, she sank to her knees and prayed. "Heavenly Father, thank thee for helping me find safety. Help me do thy will." Chapter 28, the final chapter. Yay! Despite everything people heard on the news, Utah was actually one of the least affected areas of the nation. Dragon's failure to complete his mission, combined with the fact that the people had been warned against traveling there, had kept the black flu to a minimum. However, that didn't stop the rumor mill from operating at full strength. In the days following the bioterror attack, the citizens of Utah endured a flurry of half-truths and misinformation. One rumor said everyone needed to go to the closed government building and take a pill that would help fight off the disease. Soon there would be long lines forming around the post office and city halls, but no such announcement had ever been made. Then came the word that the military was going to use helicopters to spray down the streets and to sanitize. They prompted most people to stay inside for a day until it was clear that there was just another false story. Church members who had gone to the camps were particularly vulnerable to such stories. One rumor said the government was rounding up and remaining Mormons to hold them in ransom until the prophet turned himself in as a fugitive. That caused quite a stir, but no word came from the church officials about whether it was true. That was the most agonizing part for the Mormons still in the valleys. They were accustomed to at least hearing something from their leaders, but now the church was silent. Okay, Jack's got to bark a little, guys. I'm just going to have to read louder. Under these circumstances, the maintenance missionaries found many opportunities to assist people who were struggling to cope with how the world had changed. In Nathan's case, he had felt guided to walk to the Provo temple as they approached the area. As he approached the area of the temple grounds and said to the missionary training center, the temple was surrounded by fencing, just like all the others, and the guards had been instructed to not let anyone inside. There was an armed guard standing near the temple west gate, and Nathan motioned for him to speak with him. As the man approached Nathan, he quietly repeated the password to him. After Nathan said amen, the guard nodded and started to open the gate. But dozens of people in the crowd had been watching him and began moving toward them. It's okay, Nathan told the guard. Leave it, shut it. I just felt prompted to come here. Who are all these people? The guard shrugged. They're members of the church, but they're the ones who ignored the prophet's invitation. Now they're unemployed, hungry, out of money, and feeling desperate. There's not a lot I can do for them. A lady tapped Nathan on the shoulder. Excuse me, you seem to have connections with the guard. Can you convince him to let us in? There's food stored in the temple, right? Nathan looked at her with swollen eyes. It was clear she had been sobbing heavily. It broke his heart, but he said, Sorry, we can't let you in. The lady dropped her head. It's just that our world has fallen apart, and we know we made a mistake. Things just keep getting worse around here. The rest of the members are? Nathan shook his head. I really wish I could, but those camps are sealed off anyway. But maybe I can still help. Just a minute. Nathan walked away from the group and offered a prayer to his heart about whether he should let these families to the blue camp or not. He knew one had been established in the Wallsburg Valley near Deer Creek. The Spirit confirmed his suggestion, and he returned to the. Hang on. Oh, and he returned to the woman's side. I know a safe place where we can go. It's up Provo Canyon, and I'll just lead you there. The woman's face lit up, and she gave him a hug. That would be wonderful. Words quickly spread that Nathan would lead a group up to the camp, and by the end of the day, he had walked a few miles before stopping along the Provo River near the river woods. Okay, hang on a minute. I'm looking out at something. All right. They spent the night inside an abandoned store before beginning the hike through the canyon. It took the group 3 more days to reach the camp, which didn't compare at all to the white camps, where the faithful saints were, but the people were happy to get to the camp. They didn't look thrilled to add any newcomers. The camps already were getting very upset that he was even bringing new people there because, that was taken away from the supplies that they had for themselves, okay? Hopefully, they'll find ways to get along, Nathan told himself as he hiked back down the canyon. He reached Orman 2 days later, and although he wanted to just curl up and go to sleep, the Spirit screamed at him to go to his father's house. When he arrived there, Garrett's car wasn't in the driveway, and the house was dark. He knocked loudly, but there wasn't an answer. Vanessa, Denise? He peered through the windows and then finally gave up, unsure why he had been prompted so strongly. Then, as he was walking away, he heard a window open behind him. Nathan! It was Denise. She looked terrified. Nathan ran back to the house. I'm glad you're here, she says. I wasn't sure what to do. What do you mean? I think Mom and Dad are dead. The words literally jolted Nathan, and he peered past her into the house. Where are they? In their bedroom? No, not here. They went to Los Angeles the day before the bioterror attack to help my aunt move here after the earthquake. But Dad must have caught the new disease because Mom had taken him to the hospital after he got those dark spots. The next day, she called to say he wasn't doing very good and that she wasn't feeling well. Plus, she was worried with the new travel restrictions, they wouldn't be able to come back anyway. When did you last talk to her? Nathan asked. 3 days ago. I've called and texted her lots of times since then, but she doesn't answer. Nathan was still reeling from the news. How come you didn't go with them? I had all kinds of school finals that I couldn't miss, so I stayed home. They were only going to be gone for a few days. This is terrible, Nathan said. So you've been living here alone all this time? Yes, I've just hidden away. I've got some friends who can help you, Nathan said. Let's go. Let's go to their home. And turn the page. Oh, there's actually a chapter 29. I didn't know there was a chapter 29. Here he goes. All right. Nathan and Denise walked over to the Shaw's house and found Carol tending to her tomato plants alongside the house. She walked over to the sidewalk and greeted them. "It's so good to see you," she said, giving Nathan a hug. "And you must be Nathan's sister Denise, right?" Denise brightened and surprised that this woman already knew her name. "That's right." Carol motioned back toward the house. "You've probably wondering why I care about my tomatoes when the world's just falling apart. But it keeps my mind off of things." "We completely understand," Nathan said. We've got things in our minds too. Our parents went to Los Angeles to help some relatives, but we're afraid they've caught the black flu. We haven't heard from them in a couple of days." "Oh, that's terrible," Carol said. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Denise shifted a little. "Would it be possible for me to stay with you? I've been alone for a few days now, and it's just a little scary." "Absolutely," Carol said. "Let's go inside." Besides, Erin wanted to talk to Nathan. They found Erin in the kitchen, and after sharing the news, Carol started helping Denise settle in. "You can stay in Marie's room." "Is Marie your daughter?" Denise said. "The girl Nathan really likes?" "Yes, that's her," Carol said, winking at Nathan. "Hopefully, Marie will come home soon from Chicago, but I know she'd be happy to have you stay in her room. Let me show it to you." As they moved down the hall, Erin motioned to Nathan. "Let me show you the garden. The tomato..." Okay, sorry. "The tomatoes are just starting to get taller." Nathan got the hint, and they moved outside to avoid being overwhelmed by the potential eavesdroppers. They began walking through the garden when Erin turned to Nathan and said, "I've got some news about Marie. She left her apartment and abandoned her internship a few days ago. She seems to be hiding in a building along the shoreline of Lake Michigan." The information took Nathan by surprise. "Hiding? What makes you think that?" "Well, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what she's doing," Aaron says. "At first, I was afraid she'd been kidnapped, but she definitely isn't alone. No one else with a chip has entered that part of the building. She moves around enough that I know she's alive, but maybe she's got the black flu." "Have you told Carol?" Nathan asked. I did share a few things with her since Marie won't answer our phone calls. My feeling is that things got really bad there quickly after the president's announcement, and so Marie just took off. When we talked to her a few weeks ago, she had mentioned a museum she had visited on the Navy Pier, and it looks like she's now in that same location. I'm guessing she's barricaded herself in there." Okay, so you have to remember, her dad works for the National Data Center where they track these people that have these chips in their arms. She got the chip in her arm against the wheel of the church, right? And so her dad is tracking her while she's in this building, which I think I know what's going to happen here, but I'm not going to spoil the ending. So he goes, "I did share a few things with her since Marie won't answer the phone calls. My feeling is that she's gotten really bad there quickly after the announcement, and so Marie took off. When we visited on Navy Pier, again, it looks like she's now in that same location. I'm guessing she's barricaded herself in there." "What can we do?" Nathan asked. "I'm willing to go there and find her." I knew you would say that, but it's terribly risky." Aaron says the government has been tracking a Chicago gang leader named Briggs, who has been operating in that part of the city, and it appears his followers are already looting the stores and burning the buildings near where Marie is. We're really worried it could turn into a civil war there within days." Aaron looked at Nathan's anguished face and added, "Don't worry. Carol and I have made our peace that Marie might never come home." Well, now that's not what he wanted to hear. So it's really going back to that. "Oh no, we told her not to do this. We told her not to do this." Let's see. How many more chapters is this? Oh, I need to finish this book, guys. I thought it was only 28 chapters, but apparently it seems to be more. Okay. All right. Well, he goes, "Well, I haven't," Nathan said fiercely. "My car is still in my dad's garage. I'll drive all day and all night if I have to." Aaron looked Nathan straight in the eyes. Are you that determined? Would it interfere with your church assignment?" Nathan shook his head. "Right now, my only command is to follow the Spirit in helping the saints who aren't in the camps yet. Marie certainly falls into that category." Aaron couldn't help getting misty-eyed. "Okay, you've convinced me. Let me show you something that will make your trip a lot easier." He pulled a gadget out of his pocket that looked like an iPhone, but a little thicker. He held it out to Nathan, who took it and examined it. "Is this a newfangled phone?" Aaron lowered his voice. "No, it's a chip tracking device. The only people who have them so far are the members of the CCA. I smuggled this one out last week. Thankfully, the first model has a flaw. The government forgot to make the tracking device itself to be traceable so no one will know you have it. Oh, I like that, Nathan said. What exactly can I do? Aaron took it the device back and touched the screen. It has several functions, but these are the two that will really help you. It can track an individual, and it can also detect when someone else with a chip is nearby. So you'll be able to keep track of Marie, but you'll also be able to check if anyone else is following you. This is great. But didn't the president say the government is setting up checkpoints at some borders? Nathan asked, how will I make it without getting caught? If you stick to the back roads, you'll be all right. The president's announcement came as a surprise to nearly everyone, and so the hardly started implementing those programs. It was more of a scare tactic to make people stay in place until they could get a handle on this disease. That's a relief, but something else just dawned on me. Nathan says, my car gets great gas mileage, but I'll never make it that far. What should I do? For fuel, Aaron pulled out his wallet and handed Nathan a stack of $20 bills. Cash is still king, especially at the gas pump. The prices are getting crazy, but with no one traveling to the stations, owners will happy to have customers. Plus, I've got some 5-gallon cans if you want to in the garage if you want to put them in the trunk and fill them up. Wonderful, Nathan said. I'll get to the house key from Denise and then bring my car over here. Aaron started to get a little emotional again. Thank you, Nathan. I was hoping you would come back soon. We're running short on time. This black flu has been bad on the nation, but there's something coming down the pipeline that's going to inflame things worse. They told us at work that the government is going to stop providing welfare and unemployment benefits soon. Oh boy, don't they know what will happen then? They do, but they don't seem to care. Their attitudes are so callous that they're actually looking forward to people killing each other in the streets. I've heard it referred to as population decrease. Then they expect things will settle down and we'll get the nation back in order. Whoa, Nathan says. That's some pretty dark thinking. It is, but it's also reality, Aaron said. Along those same lines, they also see the disease as a great way to balance the books on Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. They know there's going to be some temporary economic crunch because there won't be as much tax money coming during these crises. But then those entitlement programs will suddenly be in a lot better shape if millions of people are no longer on the rolls. Well, that's barbaric, Nathan said. But after what I've seen lately, it's not surprising. Even though even though there's still enough food to go around, people already seem eager to cut each other's throats. Aaron nodded grimly. That's exactly why we've got to get Marie out of Chicago. You've got me started, and I'll find a way, Nathan said. We'll figure out a route for you before you leave. Staying on a smaller highway will be your best bet because, for the most part, let me turn the page here. Oh my. All right, get this page turned. Golly, this book is so. I'm not going to say what I think about it really, but okay. There's nothing but a few rural towns and farmlands out there. The government will be focusing on the cities first. How far is it to Chicago? Nathan asked. Well, it's about 1,500 miles from here, so you got quite a drive ahead of you. Nathan shrugged. This is for Marie. It'll be worth it. Chapter 30. So there was actually 30 chapters to this book. I thought there was only 28. Marie had been in the stained glass window museum for 4 days when the power went out. Up to that point, she was actually enjoying her secluded hideaway. She found a stash of bottled water in a cupboard as she was rationing the food supplies that she had brought with her. The museum was essentially a long hallway with windows displayed positions in various points, creating a walking tour. The only doorways that were the entrance and the exit, and Marie had blocked them off already. She felt somewhat safe, but she was prepared to hide in a secluded area behind the set of windows if someone broke in. However, oh, now my battery's going to go low on my phone. Boy, that's just great. All right, I got to go plug my phone in so I can finish reading this. And my dog's going to start barking and everything's going to go wrong. Just everything. All right, hang on. Hang on. Here we go. Let me get my phone plugged in. We'll just talk for a minute while I plug in my phone so we can get going. I got to finish this. Oh my God, I got to finish this. Okay. All right. However, when the power went out, the whole atmosphere of the museum changed. Without the lights on it, it felt eerie during the day, and with only a meager amount of sunlight filtering in, some of the stained glass windows that were there part of the outside wall. Shh, stop barking, please. All right, he's not going to stop barking, y'all. We'll just keep going. However, she goes, As she reached the 1 week mark in the museum, she was essentially out of food. She had tried to resist eating her final granola bar, but she just couldn't help it. Finally, late one night, she couldn't take the solitude and starvation any longer. She slipped out of the back entrance of the museum and was astounded at the mixture of sounds that filled her ears. The museum walls had effectively muted the city noise, but now the sirens could be heard clearly, as well as sporadic rounds of gunfire. So now they're shooting at each other. Isn't that great? All right. She goes, the biggest surprise was that she couldn't see anyone walking along the pier. It had always been bustling with people, but now it was dark and abandoned. The stars blazed above her, and for the first time she noticed them since leaving Utah. She stepped out onto the pier far enough to get a better look at the darkened city and was shocked to see flames engulfing 3 separate skyscrapers along that magnificent mile. Hey, what are you doing? A man called out and shined a flashlight on her. Get over here. Don't you know the mayor declared mandatory curfew in this area? The man was about 100 yards away, and Marie immediately bolted back toward the museum. She quietly shut the door and then barricaded it again. She listened intently for the man to approach, but he apparently didn't know where she'd gone. She clutched her stomach as it rumbled for the 100th time that day. Heavenly Father, am I supposed to just die here? As Marie prayed for help, Nathan was traveling along Highway 20 in the middle of Iowa. He had been driving nonstop for 3 days, other than to park on empty dirt roads and a couple of times to catch some sleep. Overall, the traffic had been minimal. It was clear that the president's order about crossing state lines was being taken seriously. The route Aaron had helped Nathan create would keep him off the main freeways absolutely necessary. He had traveled to Brumell first and then crossed into Wyoming without seeing a checkpoint. He'd headed up North Casper, where he reached Highway 20 and crossed into Nebraska, and then Iowa without any trouble. He stopped at a gas station in each state, and each time his cash was eagerly accepted. As Nathan passed through Dubuque, Iowa, he pulled into a Walmart parking lot. This was one stretch of highway where he and Aaron were unsure what to do. Dubuque was on the western bank of the Mississippi River, and it was also the point where the borders of Wisconsin and Illinois and Iowa touched. So there's 3 states to touch right there. So there was a very strong chance a federal checkpoint would be in place at the bridge across the river. Dubuque was about 180 miles from Chicago. So Nathan hated to abandon the car this far from his goal, but he knew he'd never be allowed to drive across that bridge into Illinois. As he sat in the parking lot, he pulled out the chip tracking device, and as he and then Aaron had given him this thorough lesson about it before he left Utah. It had been surprisingly simple to figure out. He turned the device on and immediately checked on Marie's status. She was still in the same location she'd been for a week. She wasn't moving, but Nathan hoped she was just sleeping. He then switched it onto the feature that would pick up the chip signals within 200 yards. It pointed it at the Walmart store, and only about a dozen chips were identified. He scrolled through the names and the hometowns of the people inside, but they were all Iowans who likely weren't hiding. They were not heading east either. Nathan was actually surprised the store was even open. From what he'd seen during his drive across country, most stores were now empty. Desperate shoppers had emptied the shelves within a couple of days after the announcement, and the trucking industry had essentially stopped making deliveries. He'd seen dozens of 18-wheelers parked on the truck stops along the way, but he hadn't actually seen one traveling down the road since he left Wyoming. As Nathan pondered his options, a nice sedan with Illinois license plates pulled up across from him. 2 women jumped out, a blonde and a brunette, and they rushed into the store as if they really needed to go to the restroom. Nathan pointed the device at them and saw they were from Chicago. An idea hatched in his mind while the women were in the store, but it seemed crazy, so he took a moment to pray about it. Within seconds, he got a strong confirmation that it was the right decision to make. Uh-oh, what's he fixing to do this bad? He's going to do something bad, right? Okay, Lord, he thought, this is out of my hands now. When the women returned, Nathan got out of the car and approached them slowly. Hello there, he said. Are you two on your way to Illinois? The woman looked at him cautiously before the blonde replied, well, we hope, but we don't know if they will let us cross the bridge. But we both work in Chicago as nurses, though, so maybe they'll let us through. Why? Oh, I just have a friend I'm trying to reach there, but there's no way there's no way to let me through with my Utah license plates. Is there any chance I could just catch a ride with you? The brunette looked skeptical. Are you a Mormon? He goes, yes, I am. She shook her head, and then never let us cross with you. They'll never let you cross with us in this car. They wouldn't even need to know I was there. I can hide in the trunk if you want me to. The brunette rolled her eyes. That would make things even worse. They'd track your chip, and in an instant. I don't have a chip. We'd be fine. Both women did a double take. Well, that's strange, the blonde said. Who are you? That doesn't matter anyway. If I can just ride in your trunk to Chicago, I'll give you $100 when we get there. I'm actually trying to get to the Navy Pier. To make his point, he pulled out the $20 bills from his pocket. The women looked at each other. The money had caught their attention. We can get you within a couple of miles of the pier if you make it $100 each. Nathan frowned. Aaron gave him $500 and he had 300 left. Finally, he said, "It's a deal." He got his backpack out of the car and then he locked the door out of habit, although he was quite sure he'd never see it again. Then he put his life into the hands of the two questionable strangers as he climbed into their trunk and they slammed it shut. 10 minutes later, the car pulled up onto the checkpoint at the bridge across the Mississippi River. Nathan listened intently as the women charmed the guard and said, oh, they were desperately needed in Chicago to help take care of the black flu victims. Hold out your hands, the guard said. Nathan heard the beeping of the chip scanner. Then the guard asked somebody nearby, what do you think? Their chips verify their story. There was a muffled conversation, and then the guard said, drive, go on, go save some lives. Thank you so much, the blonde said as she hit the gas. Soon they were across the bridge into Illinois, and the woman started playing a hip hop music. Their hours passed, and he prayed the women would hold up their part of the bargain. After a while, Nathan remembered the chip detector also had a GPS system. He switched to that mode and was relieved to see they were within a few miles of Chicago. The music CD finally ended for the third time, and Nathan could hear the snippers of the women's conversation. He was shocked to hear that they planned to pull a gun on him and threatened to turn him in for the chip noncompliance if he didn't give them all of his money and possessions. Then they suddenly noticed the CD had stopped. He heard one of them ask, do you think he's been listening to us? Then the music started playing again. Nathan began to search frantically for a handle to release the trunk from the inside, and thankfully the car had one. They soon left the freeway, and the car began stopping occasionally at intersections. They were still moving in the general direction of the pier, so he planned to stay in the trunk a little while longer. But then the Spirit said clearly, get out of that next stop. Get out at the next stop, the Spirit says. As the car began to brake, Nathan pulled the handle. It popped open, and he leapt out and took off running down the side street. The car went about 50 feet. Women noticed that the trunk lid was up, and by then, Nathan was long. The next few minutes were among the most frightening of the Nathan's life. He stayed in the middle of the street, which was only safe because the entire city was dark except for the skyscrapers burning in the distance. He heard a lot of shouting inside and many of the buildings that he had passed. He sensed families were beginning to collapse under the stress of the past few days. He paused for a moment and set the chip detector so that he could treat Marie's chip like a geocache, giving him the remaining distance and direction to reach her. The device was designed for evil purposes, but it had been such a blessing in helping him on his journey. 2 blocks later, he prompted to switch the device on the chip detector mode, and he was stunned to see 3 people were about 30 yards behind him and getting closer. He pulled his handgun out of his pocket and whirled. Run the other way or I'll blow your heads off, he shouted. His pursuers stopped in their tracks. One called out, hey, take it easy, man. We're not going to hurt you. I'm serious, Nathan said. Another man laughing. He's bluffing. The feds took away all the guns. Let's get him. Bricks would love to have another white boy to kick around. The trio started moving forward, and Nathan didn't hesitate to pull the trigger. As the shot rang out, one of the men fell to the pavement, crying in agony, help me, I'm bleeding. Nathan instantly sprinted down the street for the next 6 blocks. At last, he spotted what looked like the top of the Ferris wheel. It was the Navy Pier. He checked the device again and was thrilled to see he was within 200 yards of Marie. He soon reached the side of the building, and Marie was now only 10 yards from him. She's got to be just inside, he thought, as he searched frantically for a way in. He moved along the side of the building until he found a door. It was locked, and he tried to kick it in. It gave way, but something else was blocking it. Marie, he called out, it's me, Nathan. Are you there? Marie was awakened from her restless sleep by a loud crash. Someone was trying to break in. She rushed to her hiding place behind one of the stained glass displays, but then she heard a faint voice. Marie, Marie, let me in. She knew that voice. Could it possibly be true? She cautiously approached the door. Nathan! Yes, oh, Marie, I'm so glad you're alive. She was almost too weak to move, that desk that was blocking the door, but she moved it just enough that Nathan could squeeze inside. He leapt over the desk and they found each other in the dark. He took her in his arms and they kissed her gently. She hugged him tightly, still struggling to comprehend what was happening. How did you get here? A series of miracles. The important thing is that we're together. He kissed her again, and Marie felt safe for the first time in months. They hugged tightly, and Nathan whispered, "Everything is going to be all right." Oh, God, let me turn this page. Okay, guys. So that is how this is how this evading Babylon ends. He goes and finds her. Now, I don't know about you guys, but then what happens, right? All right. So this is the terrible book, Evading Babylon. It's all about the chip. It's all about starving. It's all about the end of America as we know it. It's again the preppers, the preppers, the preppers, because that is what Chad Daybell and Lori Daybell or Lori Vallow Daybell was all about, the prepping and the end times. Okay, so I'm going to close for today. I'm going to figure out what I need to do to fix where you couldn't hear it. Sorry about that. I just started reading and didn't even notice, but I'll be able to fix it, I'm pretty sure. And if not, we'll just scrap it and reread it. It's okay. Anyway, I'll talk to you later. Have a good day. Thanks again for coming by. Hey, thanks, Guilty of Crime. I'm so glad you told me. I didn't know. Bye, guys.